What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So we're over here day 2 at the wainscoting project here at this house, and the first thing we need to do is get our window jamb material in. It's a 1x4. We're ripping it down to the width of the window jamb, and then we're just nailing that in. We need to do this first because we need those in to get the proper reveals and measurements for our casings and all of our stiles and rails. So once we got that in, then we can actually start constructing this. So if you remember in the last video, I talked about 3 boxes that we had to move. So we went ahead and popped those old boxes out and then made our new holes and pulled our wires through so we could pop our remodel boxes in. I'll show you this later. So here's our bottom rail on our first wall. We're going to go ahead and set this in place and then measure off of it. So once our bottom rail is in place, I'll just drop my tape right on top of it and then measure up to the reveal lines that I marked earlier. So all these headers will be at the same level line across. I'll check for this later. But this casing around the window is also our stile under for our wainscot. I talked about this also in the first video. So I'm just gonna finish measuring these up and then check it for level so our headers are all good to go. And those kind of things are real obvious if you don't get those right, if a header is taller than another. So we got all those pieces cut. John here is tacking these in with some 18 gauge brad nails. And we're just gonna get these right in their place. We're doing it this way because there's so many variables on this wall, and especially with windows, they're just some of the wackiest things to trim out. So we're getting these dead on where they go, and I'm over there in the background messing around with the transition piece that we gotta make up against these cabinets, backsplash, and countertop. So here I'm checking if the cabinets are in line with one another. They basically are. The bottom cabinet actually sticks out probably a 1/16 more than the upper. So I'm just making sure everything's plumb before I make my marks on this. And I have a cool idea on this. I'll show you here in a little bit how I handled this. But instead of, just notching out around that backsplash with the actual 1x, I went ahead and cut a rabbet in the backside of that piece so you don't see all these hard notches and you don't see a big overhang when it comes to that thin backsplash material. So here I'm marking with a straight edge, just a piece of scrap 1x2, marking the location of that countertop that I have to notch for. Here I marked in the wrong place, so I'm going to realize it and be like, oh yeah, I need to mark up here. So I marked that, put an X on it. So here I realized I was holding a 1x2 and I measured 1.5 inches from the scribe molding to my stile. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna drop that in there. And since I have that 1.5 inch 1x2 in my hand, I'm like, oh, I can use this to mark the vertical cutout that I need. And I just stare at stuff and check it, try to think 10 steps ahead just to make sure. So here I'm marking the rabbet that I'm going to cut out in the back of this piece. This will help it sit better against the backsplash. And these X's right here are everything that needs to come out of this piece. So I have that hard notch at the bottom and then this long line. So here I cut it, got my notch around the countertop, and then that rabbet cut out. So here I'm going to drop it in, and YouTube magic, it actually took me a couple tries to make this fit perfect. It was the same piece, but I had to keep micro adjusting it, but it looks good. Nice clean lines up against that backsplash, and it's not a big, 3/4 inch overhang there. So here I'm going to go ahead and take my square, go up level to my line, and mark off where this top rail is going to meet this casing / stile. I'm doing this because when we disassemble the tacked in pieces, we'll know exactly where they go when we reassemble them. All these headers up here will not be pocket screwed to the top. We're actually just going to nail those in. And one thing I'll point out here too is this 1/8 inch gap here in the corner. We do that intentionally because when we pocket screw this whole thing together, we don't want it so tight that we're fighting against it, trying to force it in. There's really no need for that. If we do that, our joints will become weak and it's not what we want, and that's the whole purpose of pocket screwing it together so it's good and strong held together. So here I'm going to go ahead and repeat that process I showed you guys earlier where I mark all the locations of where these need to be, because right here where it's tacked in, this is exactly how it will fit in. And while I'm doing that and starting the next wall, John is making all the headers for the entire room, and he's gluing the return caps on to our header cap and getting those good to go. So we got quite a bit of those, but it's just easy to pre-assemble all this stuff, and using the CA glue always helps a ton, where you don't have to, use little spring clamps and wait for it to dry, especially on such small pieces. And then when we have these end grains, we always like to pre-prime them because we're going to spray this job. And when you spray these end grains, they don't really take too well with spray because they absorb. So it's better to just have something on there first that the wood fibers can absorb, and then when you spray over it, sand it and all that, it's good to go. So here he's nailing the header cap to the header piece itself, and you can see we've got all of our headers here. Good to go. But we're gonna go 1, 1. So that's joint 1. Then we're gonna go 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, and you get the idea. So then we'll be able to screw it all together. We'll be able to cut our pockets in it first, then screw it together, and then from there on out, it's gonna be just, getting it into place. It's not gonna be a thing of, oh, is it gonna fit? Well, we know it's gonna fit because we have it loosely installed here already. So I spoke of these little boxes earlier. These are called remodel boxes or pop-in boxes. I've used these a lot on the channel because we do a lot of wainscot. And these are real easy to use. You just feed your wires through the place that makes the most sense. In this case, it's the bottom left. That's where these wires are coming from. So the bottom left, and then you see those little wings on the back, they're little toggles. Basically, those act as clamps that squeeze the drywall and hold it in place. So the little wing is a clamp, and it pinches the drywall between that little lip on the front. And when I screw it in here, that wing will compress, grab the drywall, and this thing is good to go. So the top one's in, bottom one's in, and this thing is not going anywhere. So I'll do that to all three, making sure they're nice and tight, and moving the boxes is now complete. So we went ahead and got the outlets wired back up, got our power on, and then that's pretty much it for these. That one I had to bust out a little bit more because I didn't have enough slack in the line to move it where I wanted to, but it still worked out. But yeah, those are good to go. So here's a look at the wall that we installed loosely with the brad nails, and we got the rest of these walls installed as well. So these are all good to go, and all we got to do now is basically take these things apart and cut our pockets in them and then get them in the right location. I got to figure this one out, mess around with those switches because I'm not going to move those. I'm going to work around them. So now at this point, what we're going to do, John's going to go ahead and take all these pieces out. They're all labeled already. They're good to go. I know it seems kind of counterintuitive to install and then, take it all out, but it does make sense. And while he's doing that, I'm going to mess around with these switches and just, try to wrap my mind around that. Try to work around them. We considered moving them, but it was actually too much of a hassle and we didn't have enough slack in our line. So for cutting our pockets and our stiles and rails, we're using the Castle TSM12. Even though you see a John Deere sticker on this machine, it's not a John Deere product. I threw that on there because the colors just match too good not to. So this thing right here is a complete game changer. This is not a sponsored video, but this thing, I can't brag enough about it. It just saves us so much time, makes the process not only easy, but kind of fun too. And this whole job, I think it took John under 30 minutes to cut the pockets in all of the pieces. Not for that one wall, I'm talking like the whole entire job. So it's really easy to use. You can see it just clamp the piece down, route out the pocket, pre-drill on the pullback, and release the clamp. And then you have clean pockets. So while he's cutting up the pockets for that first wall, I'm taking apart the second wall, and I'm just going to bring him the pieces. And you can see how easy it is. These 18 gauge brad nails bend back and forth and pop out. So really the install using those is not really even an install at all. We don't try to hit framing when we tack them in. We just tack them in to drywall. So I'm loading these up with some 1¼ inch Castle pocket screws. And these are Robertson drive. So the best drive I think there is. Can't stand Phillips and flathead. I love those square drives. So I'm loading all the pieces up. And we kind of got an assembly line here. I'm taking apart each wall, and then John is cutting pockets. and then I'm loading up what he brings back to me. So this actually went pretty smooth and efficient. And then at the end of the day, we have all of our headers cut, all of our pieces cut to size with pocket screws, and we're basically ready to assemble what we got here. So pretty good system, I would say. So here we go. Like I mentioned earlier, this is like building by the numbers. Everything has a location, everything has a number where it's joined up to its connecting piece, and really this is just too easy. You just use a face clamp, line up your numbers and line up your marks from the square, and then you just start building. So it's literally like Lego instructions, like put this piece here, screw it together. And you can see there, even though it's time-lapse quick, I made a mistake. We just unscrewed it and screwed it back together. So down to the last wall here, just screwing everything together. So we got everything in now, and you can check out a little transition here up against our cabinet. Got a nice tight fit. Everything's good to go. Everything's loosely, in there. And we'll actually do some prep work on our windows tomorrow, so we can, actually shoot these in. Got our headers all lined up where they go. Those will just be shot into the framing above the window. There's framing header material above each window, so we'll just shoot right into that. Those don't really need to be pocket screwed together. You can do it, but it's not really necessary. So yeah, all these fit nice, and we kind of knew we had everything checked out. You can see our 3/16 reveal. We've got that on all our windows. So we are looking good for our assembly and everything lining up, and really couldn't ask for anything else when it comes to putting this wainscot project together. I still got to work on this little piece over here, and the only thing left to do really is mess around with this transition around the light switches, but I'll get to that tomorrow. So another productive day on the wainscot project here, and yeah, I'm looking forward to tomorrow, seeing what we can get accomplished. As always, let me know if you guys have any questions, comments, tips, tricks. I know a lot of this stuff because of comments from previous videos, so I'm always willing to learn. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.